Cosmic consciousness, God, used this zero-point energy to create and created the Big Bang. And out of the Big Bang came all of the different galaxies, planets, stars, people. We're made out of star stuff, and we're sparks of God, and that's how we got our consciousness.
Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Linda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from ThoughtChange.com. We are exploring the mystical side of life once again this week. If you enjoy our conversations, remember to subscribe and share with a friend. Today we are talking consciousness with Marsha Sims. Marsha is the co-author of The Miracle of Our Universe. She is the wife of astrophysicist Bernard Haisch. Welcome, Marsha.
Great to be here.
You have had so much experience working with scientists and research trying to prove consciousness. Can you tell us a little bit about why the scientists are interested in consciousness?
Well, I think that's kind of an extraordinary situation because I think most scientists are not interested in consciousness, but the few that are, they have a spiritual bent to their personality. They've had spiritual experiences in their life. And consciousness is such a great topic. I mean, we all have consciousness, we experience it, but there's not a very good scientific explanation for what it is. And so that has really intrigued Bernie because he has had a foot in both worlds.
We all have consciousness, and then the universe also is potentially conscious. At least that's the spiritual perspective, that we live in an intelligent universe. What are your and Bernie's views on consciousness?
Well, we believe that consciousness is an awareness, and it's more than just a physical body. It's an energy. It is hard to describe, but it is basically an awareness. We believe that in our model, the God consciousness is a great, vast, cosmic consciousness that created the universe, and that we are co-creators with the universe or with God. We're little sparks of God. And so this vast cosmic consciousness created everything that there was, this vast cosmic awareness. We believe it came out of the Ein Sof, which is the vast unknown empty void that is spoken about in the Kabbalah. And for some reason, some point in time, this cosmic consciousness awareness came out of the Ein Sof and existed for a while, and then got really lonely because being one consciousness is not much to do if you're just being, right? You have to actually create to learn and to grow and have enjoyment. We use the term God because God is the traditional term that people use about the creator and the universe. You could call this cosmic consciousness the source. This God consciousness created the universe. After that, it created the zero-point energy. We believe that the zero-point energy is a magnetic field. It's very vast, all different wavelengths of energy. And cosmic consciousness, God, used this zero-point energy to create and created the Big Bang. And out of the Big Bang came all of the different galaxies, planets, stars, people. We're made out of star stuff. Carl Sagan said that we definitely are. And we're sparks of God, and that's how we got our consciousness. God uses us to have experiences. This cosmic consciousness used the energy of love. It enhances consciousness in a very strong emotional expression. It creates inspiration and an attraction that is binding. There's a lot of studying going on about it. It's mostly experimental, I believe.
I was kind of curious as to whether any of this was proven.
There are experiments that show there is a consciousness. It's kind of hard to describe because consciousness is the root of everything. And so we're offshoots of it. So we experience it ourselves, but the vast cosmic consciousness, it's hard to comprehend.
It reminds me of how a particle is a particle or a wave, depending on what is expected by the viewer. Does a tree really fall in the forest if there's no one there to see it, right?
That's exactly correct. And that's part of how we describe the whole world around us is a virtual simulation. And if there's no one there to see the tree that fell, why would that even be rendered?
So the theory is we're living in the matrix.
It's like the Matrix, but the Matrix was, it was altered or doctored for essential drama.
So not exactly like the matrix, but similar in that there's a part of our consciousness having this experience, which seems very real, very solid, three-dimensional, but not necessarily so. Is that what I'm understanding?
One of the biggest mysteries of our world is how every photon of light, every electron and quark, and indeed every point of space itself seems to just know what to do at each moment. There's a consciousness guiding it. The mystery is that these tiniest parts of the universe have no mechanisms or structures by which to make such decisions. A photon is just an object. Only God could make those decisions, the cosmic consciousness.
So is the theory that we are held in the body of God, so to speak, that we are actually part of God and have access to a certain level, I guess, of that creative power?
Well, I think we're connected to God. We're all connected. I had an awakening of the heart experience. I saw how we're all interconnected. So there's this wonderful teacher in Northern California. Her name is Gangaji. She's a spiritual teacher, and I bet a lot of people have heard of her because she's pretty famous. And she holds satsang. A satsang is a group meeting where everyone sits around her and dialogues, about spiritual questions. She resonates a beautiful energy. And that's what happened to me. The first time I went to see her, I was just sitting in the front and she just walked in and she looked at me. And I looked at her and this energy just came right out of her eyes. She just completely zapped me. And it was an awesome, awesome power or force of beauty and love. And I just went into this altered state where I closed my eyes and I saw like swirls of pink and blue and purple just go right out my crown chakra. And I was in ecstasy. My heart started palpitating. Tears of joy just streamed down my cheeks. And I looked around in the room and we were all spiritual seekers. And I saw the interconnected strands of white light that connected each of us in that room. And those strands of white light showed me what a powerful group of beings we are here on the planet. And God, the God force was going through as photons of light, really. Actually, it was like light.
That's a really beautiful story, Marsha, and it's actually really similar to how the ancient Hawaiians saw energy. They saw something called an aka cord that connects you with everyone. Everyone you talk to, everyone you think about, everyone you interact. You could have all these aka cords running all over the place, aside from being part of the tapestry of creation itself. So it's very interesting that you had that experience.
And I also am a Huna teacher, so I was aware of that possibility, but I really saw it. Yeah, so I studied Huna. I've had Huna groups. I'm a certified Huna teacher from a group called Huna Research in Missouri, although I'm not sure they still exist anymore, but it was about 30 years ago that I used to go to meetings there. Are you a Huna teacher?
I'm not a Huna teacher. I am a Huna initiate. I would say I've been to Hawaii 5 times to take training on the Big Island with some of the Hawaiian masters and the lineage that is teaching it.
Very lucky.
Beautiful, beautiful system for sure. And they also believe that the void and how all things that are created come out of that void, like you were talking about earlier.
Right.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about the God theory that Bernard was working on?
The God Theory was Bernie's first book, and it's the one that he's really very passionate about, and it is the most popular one so far that he's written. Although I do hope our book will become just as popular. It's called The Miracle of Our Universe, a new view of consciousness, God, science, and reality. We have a website, and it's themiracleofouruniverse.com.
Considering the title of your book, what's new about consciousness?
Bernie has evolved because when he wrote The God Theory, he was specifically writing the book for scientists to help them understand more about the existence of God and to understand spirituality. Bernie has been a seeker all his life. And so when he wrote the God Theory, he was trying to prove the things that are really interesting in the universe that show that there's a consciousness behind them. And he wrote something like the 10 basic theories about why, things couldn't have happened just by accident. And one of them is the property of water. Anyway, so that's really the God theory is how can scientists appreciate the possibility that there is a God? Now, our book, The Miracle of Our Universe, Bernie has become more of a spiritual believer now as he's gotten older. And, as he got sick with Parkinson's, he's gotten really interested in possibilities of near death experiences and what is life after death. So we have all that information in our book. There's a lot of science in it talking about why there is a vast cosmic consciousness, why there could be a God and near death experiences and reincarnation, and even our 0 point energy experiment, believing that the 0 point energy is an expression of God. I even talked about my near death experience, which is very interesting. That's what started me on my spiritual path. I saw the other side.
So, what did you see on the other side, or what did you experience?
I should tell you about the whole experience. So, when I was 16 years old, my family was vacationing at a little beach south of Santa Cruz called Rio del Mar. And we were with another family. And so they had 3 boys, and I was with my sister. And we were out jumping in the surf. It was spring break, and, it was a little windy, and the water was a little wild, but it didn't matter to me because I loved to swim. I'd been swimming for a long time. And so I was body surfing and thinking, yeah, these guys are pretty powerful. This is really fun. Well, it wasn't fun when a huge rogue wave came up, crashed right over me, and sucked me under and pulled me out. By the time I was able to come to the surface, I could no longer touch the sand. So I was terrified. And it just kept sucking me out to sea. And I could not get out of it. And first I was terrified. I was screaming, and all the people on the beach were screaming. And after a little while, this beautiful feeling came over me, and I started to see the other side. And I started floating. I didn't have to struggle so much. And I went into a kind of a trance. And I saw the other side. My ancestors were there. My grandmother Sims, her husband, my mother's mother, her husband, and it seemed like many, many ancestors that I'd had through time were there. And they all said to me, it was kind of like this uniform voice, and I was kind of in a daze because I was getting really cold. Marsha, don't worry. It's not your time to go right now. We're here to help you. All you have to do is just lie back and relax and float. We'll keep you afloat. And they joined hands under me. It was beautiful. It kept me floating. And honestly, I didn't have to swim very much. Even though I did paddle a little bit, I didn't have to swim very much. I was floating on a sea of love and light. Really, a sea of love and light. And I saw that the other side is full of love and light and beings that we know that support us. And I saw the life on the other side. So I just kind of stepped into it. I didn't travel as far as someone like Abe and Alexander did, but it was enough to see the other side and know that I was an immortal, conscious being. And that changed my life.
What a beautiful story.
Yeah. So the whole thing was like 45 minutes. It was traumatizing, but beautiful, but changed my life.
How did it change your life?
Well, it opened me to the other side. It opened my psychic abilities, my intuition, and I do have healing abilities too.
It's actually really wonderful to hear someone in the scientific community having an open mind about something so esoteric. A lot of these theories or beliefs have been around for millennia, but we haven't ever had proof before.
That's true.
Now, you did mention 0 point energy. Can you define it for us?
So it's a vast electromagnetic energy and it undergirds all of matter. And it's not just a made up thing. Einstein and Max Planck were aware of it and they spoke of it in their research. So the 0 point field, the ZPF, is part of the ZPE, 0 point energy. The field is the field of this energy. It's also known as the quantum vacuum field or the QVF. And this energy is everywhere in the universe, even when there is nothing but a vacuum. It's composed of a combination of every frequency or wavelength that exists. Some are short, some are long. It's perfectly random. And we believe in Bernie's company, Jovion, Jovion. You can read about it as jovion.com. We have our experiment there. We all think that the ZPF can be tapped in a way that would provide humanity with an endless supply of totally clean energy without violating the second law of thermodynamics. Our process has nothing to do with heat because it's electromagnetic. There's a Casimir force that happens when two parallel metal plates are pushed together by an overpressure of the ZPE from the outside of the plates. And a Casimir cavity can be created that takes advantage of this force. The ZPF can be manipulated through the nano-sized Casimir cavities by squeezing out photon energy. Electron orbitals of an atom spiral down inside the cavity and photons are emitted. Our process would then send the photons through a photovoltaic cell and electricity would be generated. This is like solar energy, and we already know that solar energy works. And the sun's energy is channeled through photovoltaic cells. So we would channel the 0 point energy photons. The photons are what we're collecting off the sun, right? The sunlight. Okay, so this is photons from the ZPE. And but it has to be nano-sized. That's why it's not been perfected yet, because we're just still learning more about nanotechnology. the electron orbitals of an atom would spiral down inside the cavity. The photons would be emitted, and we would then build a little device to channel this energy. We're calling it the Casimir generator. That's already patented, and it would create a revolutionary way to have clean energy, and it would combat climate change. It doesn't require any fossil fuels or nuclear fuel and emits no waste, carbon, or harmful byproducts. And as I said before, Bernie believes the ZPE may be an expression of God. So this goes with his consciousness research and his scientific research. It's a perfect blending. He's using the expression of God to transfer energy from the cosmic consciousness to our physical level. In the New Testament, John chapter 1, verse 1, it states, "In the beginning was the Logos, or the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." So it's reasonable to consider the possibility that the 0-point field and the Logos are one.
That's really exciting to think that there is a potential to have this kind of energy to combat global warming and just get us on a totally different track. It's very exciting.
It's hard to get the funding to get the Casimir cavities because mainstream science is very skeptical about the possibility of decaying electron orbitals. We need to get the Casimir cavities and test it out to see if we can gather the electron orbitals or the photons. So we are really looking for funding. If anyone has any ideas, we really would appreciate getting some guidance.
I'm curious if this 0-point energy has ever been harnessed for any purpose.
Well, it's difficult to say because I think the New Age community has misused 0-point energy. They haven't understood what it really is. I mean, it really is an electromagnetic force, and we don't believe anyone has been able to tap it yet.
We have a special appearance by astrophysicist Bernard Haisch. Good to have you here, Bernard. So, how does God experience the world?
Well, that's what we are doing here. We have experiences at every moment of our lives and of all sorts of different things. And I was using skiing as an example. Some people like to ski, as I used to do. But if God would like to see what that feels like, he'd have to make a being, make a creation that is capable of doing that. A spirit can't ski. So God can't ski down a mountain because it's just logically impossible to combine those things. And so if God wants to experience the wonderful thing called skiing, he has to make a ski-ready creation person that we want to do that.
And that's really true of everything, right?
Right. Everything has to have a purpose.
What really makes me smile about that, Bernard, is that so many times when I have people come in person and lay on the healing table and tap into the energy, I always think how fascinating every single person's life is to the divine. That information is going back to the divine and expanding the total consciousness. Every single person is fascinating. Every single person.
The thing that is neat about this theory is that it renders an easy explanation of why the universe should arise. Why did some consciousness make the universe? Well, I'll tell you, it's to have experience. It's to be able to understand the potential capabilities of a new source of power or a new source of invention of some kind. There's no longer a mystery why there should be a God, because that's what God wants to do, is experience what he can do. It gives God full credit for being a brilliant creator, and it gives us a role to play that has all sorts of meaning to it. And that's our lives, which then get uploaded to, let's say, they get uploaded at the end of our lives to God. That's a good term, I guess, upload our life experiences.
It's just too magnificent to be random.
Mhm.
Can I ask you about the Z point energy and if anyone has ever harnessed it and put it in a device, whether that's for healing or energy or any other possibility?
Well, there are lots of claims that such a thing has happened, and as far as I know, none of them have. None of them have succeeded in showing that there's a net flow of energy out of any device that's supposedly powered by the zero-point field. And so I think that we're still on the trail of something that has not yet been properly tested, and hoping still to be able to make that come about. Now, it's also thought by many of these people that are involved with devices that they think that such devices do already exist as projects that exist on Earth. And in fact, that there has been, and I say it's very, very briefly on that there has been contact made already with other civilizations. When we actually, my guess is that ZP energy is the basic powering mechanism to create, all the possibilities. So I think what I hear, there are some very good indications that we may come into contact with that intelligence or intelligences or civilizations, I would say. It's kind of on the verge of happening, I believe, but it hasn't quite happened yet.
So much change, right? There's so much change upon us. Do you think there's any danger in humanity being able to harness zero point energy? We have a bad track record with things like greed and selfishness.
Yeah, definitely. It is dangerous. I mean, it is the source of energy is dangerous. The thing about zero-point energy is that the kind of device that I visualize is intrinsically limited in the amount of energy that can be found to it. It peters out at a place in the ultraviolet spectrum, the ultraviolet part of the ultraviolet spectrum that would prevent it from being basically built into a critical mass. You have critical mass in the nuclear energy domain, and that is by our conception of it would rely on a particle or it would rely on a Casimir cavity that is a certain size and no smaller, and that no smaller is a key because that is where the ability to extract energy in a dangerous way lies, I think. And so there may be a built into the zero point energy kind of a cutoff valve that prevents the reactions, beyond a certain level that would become life threatening. But there I'm really in a very speculative realm.
Do you think there's a possibility that this energy could be intelligent? The zero point energy.
Well, yeah, in fact, in my view, it's infinitely intelligent. Because if I had thought of all these things, like how to do them and then to make them happen somehow, and it makes them real, why, that's a whole lot of work and a whole lot of brain power.
Perhaps it will have a turn off mechanism if our human consciousness is not at a level to actually use it appropriately.
From my point of view, the zero-point energy, I think of it now as being the energy that is God. It's hard to do, not hard, but it's to differentiate between God as a creator and God as a mass consciousness are kind of two different things.
Thanks for joining us, Bernard.
So I would just like to state Bernie's philosophy of life in this quote that he came up with when he was the executive managing editor of the Journal of Scientific Exploration. Advances are made by answering questions. Discoveries are made by questioning answers. It's such a profound way of looking at how scientific research progresses. A lot of mainstream scientists, they're worried about getting their grants, their government money, etc. So they just keep answering questions. But the true breakthroughs come when the answers are questioned and new ideas come up.
The curiosity of the scientific mind, right?
Yeah.
Marsha, it's been a joy having you today and meeting Bernard as well. Thank you for being my guest. If anyone would like to know more about The Miracle of Our Universe, your book, or Bernard's work, where can we send them?
Thank you for asking. We have a website. It's www.themiracleofouruniverse.com. And our Facebook page is the same, The Miracle of Our Universe.
Perfect. Thank you, Marsha.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
And thank you for listening to this week's edition of Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. You will find all of our conversations on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. Come visit me at potchange.com to learn what energy medicine can do for you. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.